Hello and welcome everyone to episode 39 of One Piece at a Time, the One Piece read-through podcast where we read and discuss 5 chapters of the One Piece manga each and every week. I'm your host, Derek Bittner, and I'm joined by my wonderful co-host and freelance letterer at Shonen Jump, Brandon Bovia. How you doing, Brandon?
How's it going, everybody? I am, of course, the Brandon Bovia, the English letterer of manga like Dragon Ball Super, Kaiju number 8. I'm sitting here like, we're on episode 39, and next week, we're going to hit chapter 200 and episode 40 of this podcast. And that is just like 2 really rad milestones wrapped up into one.
Yeah, the big 200. And I mean, I'm curious how Oda celebrates that, if at all. Like I don't know if he plans big things for those hundreds, because, you know, we got the big leaving East Blue, head towards the Grand Line at 100. And with us in the middle of Alabasta, what can he really do to make 200 seem like a big momentous occasion? And I actually don't know. Other, like, obviously because it just happened. Chapter 1000 was really, really great, even though if it was not like anything plot significant. You know, it was just one of those kind of like, yeah, we're here. You know, it was one of those chapters that felt appropriate for that number. Yeah,
it was like, yeah, all right, it's happening.
Awesome. We'll see what happens.
That's the only one I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, I haven't really. This is my first time reading the entire way through the manga, and I can't remember the numbers, the chapter numbers of the ones I read when I was catching up and like stopped with the anime and continued with the manga and just went from there. So we'll get there. Out, whatever. But we have an interesting batch of chapters here, I'd say, is the best way to put that, because I'll be honest, and maybe my mind will change as we talk about it, but I wasn't fully impressed with at least some of the chapters in this set. Yeah. So
I'm kind of neutral. But I think coming off of it, I like, as we'll get into here, the sort of like Nami versus Miss Doublefinger fight. Mm-hmm. I like it more in concept than in execution, I think. And so there's a couple little nuggets here and there that I can latch onto, but on the whole, I'm kind of with you.
Yeah. Well, let's get into that with chapter 191, She Who Controls the Weather. And first up, we've got more of Hachi's adventures, where now he has his trident from the Goldfish Kingdom, and he runs across a sea boar being hunted by a sea monster. And maybe his that sea boar is reminding him of his old pal, what is it, Momu? Momu, that's it, Momu.
Yeah. I really enjoy the scale of this cover page, because it is just like the sea boar on its own compared to Hachi is like huge, and then you have the sea monster taking up the entire background. You're like, oh,
yeah, that's a big one. That's a huge one. I don't know if we're gonna be trading anything here, but I guess we'll find out. But last time we ended off with Doublefinger feeling a little bit of pity for Nami. That seems to be gone, because she immediately goes into a double stinger and just punctures the hell out of that wall.
It feels like one of those like JoJo auras, but just incredibly precise.
Yes, that's a very good way to put it. You could almost, I know we're getting a chalk here, but you could just see the aura.
Yeah.
Nami's cloak gets ripped a little bit, but hey, she's pretty good at dodging. She gets out of the way.
She knows how to dodge roll.
Yeah. So we're basically back to taunting, like, you can't get away, and Nami's like, I still have tricks up my sleeves. One of these has to work. So forecast is thunder. So here's thunder tempo, and it's a little boxing glove on the end.
and it is funny, but like, I think it is around this point in the fight where I realize, like, there's just going to be no tension here, is there?
No, there really isn't. Like, there's a rule, you often hear about the rule of threes with comedy, like make the same joke how many times, and this is our third, and unfortunately, it's not really our last.
Yeah, I think I would have been okay with it if it were the rule of threes and it was that, but like, I think because Nami gets kind of like grazed on the cheek, and it like kind of jumping from that to her kind of going back to reading the instruction manual is a little bit weird to me, because it is like, this is a very tense situation, and she just got injured, but we're sort of back. it feels like a turn-based battle or something like that. Like Miss Doublefinger is sort of here just waiting for a turn while Nami is like trying to figure out the joke.
Yeah, she's just constantly trying to get away to read more of the manual to actually be able to fight. And I don't know, it makes you start like questioning things like, how did Nami not have time to read this? Because I know she asked Usopp about that weapon a while ago. She had time to read the instruction book and maybe practice. But again, it would take away from a bit the comedy aspect of this, because you get that fun, you do get those fun bits of comedy. And Doublefinger is ridiculous. How
I really love like her power set might be the funniest part about this whole thing.
Yeah, just I love how Oda just constantly finds way to just escalate her powers, because it goes like just simple stab moves into her going to the hedgehog stinger. She starts whirring, so she's like on the ground, which makes me think of Kirby and his power.
I really like before she uses the hedgehog stinger, like that reveal that like Miss Doublefinger is like hanging upside down on the bridge above Nami, and then she like does the hedgehog thing, and it's like a dive bomb attack.
Yeah, there is power there. You see why Doublefinger is so effective, but you get this cool bit here where Nami's running away, but she finds a window, dashes through the window, crashes through it with Doublefinger after her, like wrapped up in there, and then she uses the cloak to wrap up Doublefinger and get away. It's like that is there's some legit cool moments in here. Then you immediately go back into running away, where she's trying to read, and that's when she discovers that the combat functions are on the other side.
I would be okay with it if this was the end of the joke. I think this is a great end to like, oh, okay, the reveal is that she was reading the wrong side. Yeah. I think that's funny.
And she has probably the most ridiculous face she's ever had.
Yeah, definitely up there.
It's not too often you get the pretty one in a manga or anything like that make ridiculous faces like that. But she's like, all right, I got these instructions. I'm not going to run or hide anymore. I've been a thief for 8 years, and I've always survived with my own wits. So she's, taking off the cloak, taking off the scarf, ripping the dress so she can have better movement. And now she looks like she's ready to fight, which...
Yeah, at this point, I'm in.
Yeah, it's awesome. Really gets you in for it. You start learning more about the climate baton, where shaking or blowing into them will release air bubbles. One for heat, one for cool, one for electricity. And they demonstrate this where it's like, oh, it's a little warm. Oh, it's a nice breeze. Oh, that's a little shock. I was like, okay, it's still not impressive.
And then, of course, it's just like, reading the note. Well, you see, at parties. And it's just like, okay. Yep, here, we're still doing it.
Yep. It's like the party aspect is still there. And it's like, no, I forgot about that. Where it's like, even when she gets to the actual stuff, because I was really hopeful. It's like, okay, she's into the actual side of the instructions. Let's do it. Yeah. And then the party aspect from Usopp again is like, that idiot. Like, I know that's supposed to be the feeling, but it just... kills the tension here. And I know it's supposed to be ridiculous because we have freaking Miss Doublefinger's sewing stinger, which
which I finally realized. I mentioned before a couple episodes ago that it's like watching her walk, like just sort of slowly walk towards you, feels like something out of a horror movie. It feels like Slender Man to me.
Yeah.
Like just the sort of just kind of just horrifying presence.
If Slenderman had some good hips, that'd be
exactly.
Doublefinger. And you do get these moments where it just seems desperate, like where she pierces Nami's leg. That's legit tension. We get that potential where we get the cyclone tempo where, okay, we're getting into something.
It's a good hit in.
Something happens because that sent her back.
Yeah.
And Nami's starting to learn more about it. It's like, oh, that's it. The heat ball and the cool ball. When they stop spinning, the hot and cold air bubbles collide and form a bigger bubble that releases explosive winds. And then it's like, oh, it's like a boomerang. You can be played outside with everyone after the party. And it's like, oh my God, this idiot doesn't even know what kind of weapon he's made.
I do sort of wonder, this sequence had me thinking, like, how would Usopp's own fights change with like this approach to inventiveness? Because I feel like this is even a step beyond what he was doing against Miss Merry Christmas and Mr. Four.
Oh yeah,
like this just feels like pure science. Like that he's just invented something genuinely useful, even if it maybe not quite on purpose.
Yeah, kind of odd in that way because it is on its
I want to. I don't dislike that aspect.
No.
I think it's interesting.
It works because even though he did all this stuff to just like as mostly party favors, it ties into what Nami's capable of. So her being smarter than Usopp kind of carries the theme where Nami is the smartest of the group.
Yeah, no, that's true.
And she's sort of deciphering their idiocy. But it's frustrating because we get these moments like, okay, she got the thing. She's figured out how that cyclone tempo works. And we find out that the tornado tempo is a big, big move. And then we get this sort of horrifying moment when we see Nami pierced in the chest, the throat, and the forehead by Doublefinger. And it's an after image. Well, kind of. She created a light refraction, a mirage. And we get this decisive moment. It's like, okay, one more chapter of jokes, but she understands the climate baton. We're good to go.
I even like, and this is something that I don't really feel like they play into that much, but like the mirage really builds into like Nami's sort of like the trickster aspect of her character, like the you know, the kind of undercover cat thief aspects of her character. And looking back, this part feels a little underutilized. I mean, it's fine in this moment, but I'm just thinking like in hindsight, I wish this was an aspect of her character that like her fights emphasized more.
Yeah, I can see that. This chapter on its own is not bad. I should emphasize that. I think it's the frustration to the later chapters because in reality, this should have been it. This should have been the end of the joke aspect. She understands the climate baton. We're good. But
yeah, and it feels like we'll get to it when we get to it. Actually, I have a take that I'll save until we get to it.
Fair enough. But yeah, there's an SBS. Really, not much to mention other than some weird character's history that I don't even know who he's talking about. So whatever there. And let's go ahead and get to chapter 192, Tornado Warning, where Hachi saves the sea boar, uses that trident to just stab into that sea monster, and like,
I'm surprised it's as effective as it is. Like you'd think it'd be like getting pinched relative to your size.
You'd think, but
the sea monster looks like he's in pain. Like, ooh,
looks like he got him in the tongue.
Actually, yeah. Ooh, okay,
that might have done it.
Yeah, okay. I didn't read that as the tongue initially.
It's a little hard to see.
You're right. Yeah. Because there's sort of like, there's like a little like kind of blood scratch with the hatching behind him.
It seemed like it was his cheek at first, but now it's like the closer I look at that, the more it seems like his tongue.
I can totally see that.
Yeah.
Either way, you know, Hachi again proving that he's trying to do the right thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and trying to save the sea boar. He's having a lot of adventures underneath the water.
Yeah. I'm really enjoying how fast paced this one is.
Yeah, there's always something going on. It's rare for the covers to stick to any one thing. You're always on to the next, which is, again, going back to the gold standard of, you know, kind of like Buggy. There's always something different.
Yeah.
But into the chapter itself, we're at the Alabarna Southeast Gate where Sanji has met up with Chopper and Usopp has bandaged basically to a mummy state.
He's just head to toe. I do sort of like this makes me lament that we talked about this during Loketown, but the fact that Usopp buying new goggles had to get cut for time, and so I feel like there could be sort of like there's a joke there somewhere with him going out of his way to buy these new goggles, and you know, like he's complaining, you broke them.
Kind of go a little bit beyond that, but yeah, it's one of those things, and
it's a fun little thing.
Yeah, it's fun, and hey, eyelashes has shown up because now it's safe, and it's like, all right, well, we've regrouped, and our next destination is the palace, so let's go there and help out Vivi. Meanwhile, at the palace, turns out all the guards are like, oh crap, Crocodile's in there. We need to go rescue her. Get the gates open. And that's when...
That face on the bottom left panel.
That'd be the right face, because it's like all of a sudden all these hands coming out of the wall. That would be really freaky.
Horrifying. Jesus Christ.
Yes.
And yeah, we got the first named attack we get from Miss All Sunday. I don't remember.
No, I think we had a few during Pell.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
I think we had a few during the Pell fight. But she uses those hands to just toss all those enemies away, and
it's such a goofy visual. Like it's simultaneously horrifying, hilarious.
Yeah,
it's just goofy.
It really,
but surprisingly effective. Like there's just a whole an entire squadron of guards just getting pushed down a bunch of stairs by hands that manifested from the front door. So good.
Did the trick. But you want to talk about horrifying? Poor Cobra getting pinned to the wall by the arms.
Yeah. Ooh.
Like just above the elbow. It's like, ooh, that's pretty devastating right there. Cobra's in a little bit
the
of
fact that
rough
he can still talk.
because he's losing a lot of blood. Yeah, he's caught. All of them are there. And Vivi finally asked the question. It's like, all right, where's Luffy? And it's like, no, he's dead. It's like, no way. There's no way you could have defeated him. Well, no way Crocodile could have done that. It's like, well, never mind him.
I like that Crocodile kind of lays down the law really, really clear here. Where he's just like, I have no intention of sparing you or your father. Like the kingdom perishes, the royal family goes with it. Like, you know what? I mean, he's kind of right.
Yeah.
But it's cold.
He's not wrong, but he's just laying it all out there. It's like, yeah, you guys are going to die, but there's something I need to know before I take your throne. Where is the Pluton? Which Vivi has no idea about. As always, all Sunday is just emotionless. Chaka seems to be somewhat alert, and Cobra definitely knows about this. Those eyes.
Yeah, it's just weird. It's our first time hearing about it. It's kind of a... How dare we having to go back to the fight? Like, wait, what's he talking about? But apparently that's what Crocodile was after the whole time, he says.
Yeah, this is
this Pluton.
We'll hopefully learn a little bit more about that later on. But for now, we are back to the Nami fight, and she is currently pinned to the wall by Doublefinger's arms and boobs.
I was like, it took me a second to realize like what was going on here. I was like, wait, okay, those are her arms, and oh my god,
yeah, yeah.
It is like the bottom right panel where it's just like her face transforming into the spike, and then just like her boobs outstretched off to the side of the page. I'm just like, man, what a One Piece is a comic.
That is a choice.
Oh man.
I mean, I guess it gets that out of the way right away. With the people asking, is this affected by the devil fruit?
Yes.
People are like
answering that question right now.
It's like, yes.
So if a man had the spike fruit, all right, moving on.
I think this is whatever your question is. Yes.
Yes.
But Nami's still able to dodge and get away. She tosses over one of the climate batons, sends out a little bit of electricity or whatever, and I guess Doublefinger took it from her. I didn't quite read that quite right. She used the other two to get it back. She realizes that she needs some moisture in the air. And there's a rain tempo. Somehow this thing can generate water, but
again, like I mentioned in the last episode, like, aren't we in a place where there being no water is kind of the major problem?
Yeah. It's one of those things. I feel like Nami's almost yelling at the audience at this point. It's like, I do have a plan. This is all she's saying. And I don't know. I think the major thing here is, even because this is just something that goes on, is Nami dodging, Doublefinger trying to hit, using her different stingers, looking pretty devastating. If Nami wasn't fast, it definitely would be a quicker fight, but thankfully she is fast enough to avoid all this, and basically buying time to do her attack.
And it's like, there really isn't that much, like, it is kind of, you start to feel the pattern, like, we do a gag, and then Miss Doublefinger says, like, okay, that's enough playing around, and she tries an attack, Nami dodges, and then there's more playing around.
Yeah.
that is basically what has been going on this whole time.
It's new attack by Doublefinger, Nami running, trying to get a spot chance, and it's just that aspect. And there are fun moments here. The sea urchin, the fact that she can use her acupuncture to buff up her muscles for Doublefinger is like
an interesting look.
There's some cool ideas here. There is.
Yeah.
But the pacing is just
No, it's not. Yeah, it's kind of not quite there. I think for me is that there's kind of no ramp up.
Yeah.
With this fight, like it really does feel just sort of like, kind of not even really building on the same joke. It's kind of just the same joke, and it just it definitely kind of makes the tension fall a little flat, especially with like there's this weird dichotomy between Nami, who is very clearly fighting for her life, and Miss Doublefinger, who could basically, like, if she took this seriously at all, she could kill Nami. And she's kind of playing with her food a bit, but I think I get a little underwhelmed when, for like the third or fourth time, Miss Doublefinger is like, okay, all right, now, like, all right, playtime's over for the fourth time.
Yeah, and watching like, what are you doing with your toy? I'm not. It's whatever. I'll amuse you at this point, or just like getting this chance. It's like, are you ready to die? Well, are you? And it's like, okay, that's a cool moment, but it's such a long build up to it that. Yeah, it's cool that Nami was able to summon a small cloud to hit her with a thunderbolt and definitely do some major damage to her finally. But I found myself checking out. Like, not even the second Mirage does anything. Like, I love the confidence that Nami's starting to have here. But every time she gets that confidence, they go back to that jokey attitude.
Yeah, I feel like it's a weird setup with the back and forth here. And I think... How do I put it? Like we talked about this during the Chopper and Usopp fight, where it kind of feels like, to me, a fight is more interesting when, like, you have two opposing forces and they're kind of trading control of the fight and sort of like seeing what each one does while they're in control. And, like a lot, characters are more interesting when they're on the back foot. It's always more interesting to watch a hero on the back foot try to regain the advantage. But the way it sort of jumps back and forth here is, I don't know, it's not working for me.
Yeah, it's just too, like, you kind of feel the threat for Nami, but because it's going into the joke aspects, and Oda's balanced jokes before. There have been some really silly moments, and it's worked, but for whatever reason, it just feels like it's gone a little too far in the joke direction here.
I can agree with that.
And I don't know. I was so sad because I'm like, okay, the manga has improved upon complaints I've had with the anime pretty consistently here. And it's not doing it. Like, it's faster, but that's about the only improvement.
Yeah, and that is surprising when you put it that way, because I feel like that has been sort of like our... Whenever we did have something that we complained about with watching the anime, it's sort of like, while we're reading the manga, you're like, okay, this doesn't... Like it is usually improved significantly with the things that we maybe didn't enjoy as much in the moment in the anime. It's kind of like, oh, okay, this is over and done with pretty quick.
Yeah.
And it just sort of gets right to the point. I feel like I would remove an entire chapter from this fight. It would be improved significantly.
Yeah, I'd agree. And it sucks to say that because this is Nami's big first fight. And
yeah, I think that's what I mean when I said that I like it conceptually. Because I do like watching Nami on her own here, trying to figure out an opponent. And
have a weapon that takes advantage of her navigator skills.
Yeah, exactly.
So
it's just a matter of not quite coming together.
Well, let's go ahead and move on to chapter 193, Utopia.
Man, this is a negative episode.
Hachi has rescued a sea boar, but seems like something's in the mouth of that sea boar, so...
Yeah.
Not sure what's going on there. Not a whole lot to comment on that one.
Yeah,
but,
pretty much just moving right along.
So, get right back into the fight, where we have Usopp reminding Nami, through memories, that the tornado tempo is a last resort. I only have one shot at it. If you miss, it's all over. And Doublefinger finally looks like she's done. She's going for the kill, attacking with her sea urchin, especially with Nami's leg not looking great. And... there is a legit good moment here where Nami's just like puts her foot through the stinger.
Oh, this is the one part of the fight I remembered very clearly.
Yes, this works.
And I love the speech that Nami has here, where she's just, it doesn't hurt a bit. Do you have any idea the pain that Vivia suffered? Compared to that, a foot or two or three is nothing. I love it. It's great stuff. And seeing Nami kind of step up, pun not intended, for Vivi, for her friend, is just it's really poignant. I think that works here.
Yeah, and I will say this one time with the tornado tempo is, I think, the one time the joke works.
Yeah, this one got me because I was like, because I didn't remember how this fight ended, so like, okay, the birds come out. Seriously, one more time, but then it gets you.
Yeah, they start wrapping around.
That's a twist on the joke, which is what I wanted.
Yes, we finally got a variation to it, and it was well paced. It wasn't just her dancing around for a page or anything like that. It's like, bam, no, it didn't work. It's another joke. All of a sudden starts twisting. Oh, and then finally, like even like Nami being completely thrown off, twisting around and sending her flying through a wall and actually knocking her out.
Yeah. Wow.
It's
and I love it. Kind of looks like because she gets sent through multiple walls. I love the detail here because the silhouette that like the silhouette that she made in the wall when she got knocked through it. It's like kind of like Miss Doublefinger is like, it's like her head is off to the side, but then when she comes out on the other wall, that like her head is on the bottom, so it's like she's got spun through the wall. And I think that is actually a really clever way to convey that.
Yeah,
I thought it was an art mistake at first, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, no.
Yeah, she just spun the entire way through, and that's a good detail.
That's awesome.
Helps show the impact, and it can make sense, especially with her guard being down the entire time, not knowing what's going on, and then getting knocked out like this. Like, this is just a case of Doublefinger really underestimating what Nami was capable of.
Yeah, she didn't take it seriously, and
she
paid the price. Well. And I think it is maybe a little frustrating here, reflecting on that fight, going like, man, yeah, if she took it like even close to seriously, Nami wouldn't have stood a chance. So I wonder if Oda kind of struggled here with, excuse me for saying a bad word here, but the power scaling of this fight, just because like the gap is so wide between, Nami having her first solo fight and the having to take on an experienced assassin.
Yeah, and not only that, the partner of the most powerful member of Baroque Works.
Yeah, exactly. So it feels like how Oda wanted to convey the fight was sort of, it was stuck between two halves.
If she was able to use a little more of her trickery, because again, she has 8 years of experience thieving, learning how to trick people. If it played a bit more into that, I think it could have worked.
Yeah. And I will say I don't remember having this complaint with other kind of Nami fights in the future, and I feel like she does, now that she's figured out how to use the climb attack. It's like, I don't think this is really a gag at any other point in any of her other fights.
I do think this is a one and done.
I'm not even against the gag itself. I just think it got repetitive.
Yeah. Because we can compare this to Usopp. Usopp has the same sort of issue where he's not strong at all.
Yeah.
And he has to use his ingenuity to win those fights. But the way he's done it, the fact that he's put oil on that fish man and then set him on fire and then whacked him over the head enough times, that makes sense. Again, he's just using that running ability that makes it a bit more believable. And even here, like, Usopp wouldn't have won this fight against Merry Christmas and Mr. Four if it wasn't for Chopper.
Yeah.
He played a key role, but he wouldn't have won on his own. I will say I do appreciate the fact that she's like, Nami's completely caught off guard. Like, what just happened? She looks up, sees the hole, looks around, looks at her baton, and just raises her fist up and goes, yeah.
Yeah, I love that little yeah.
That is cute.
You know what? I'm proud of you, Nami. I am. I'm glad she got that fight. As much as we've been complaining about it.
It's a build up to the future.
Yeah. So, again, conceptually, I'm all for it.
Agreed. But let's return to Crocodile, who's finally explaining a bit more about Pluton, where one shot of it can vaporize an entire island. And
before we get too far into this, I just want to say one thing. I will try to only acknowledge this one time. If you're caught up, this entire conversation is hilarious.
Oh, really? Oh, boy.
Yeah, it is extremely funny.
Oh, boy. But yeah, it was apparently named after the god of death, most terrible weapon, and it's sleeping here in Alabasta. So his goal is to create the most powerful military nation in the region and recruit pirates to serve under him and increase his political power until he can surpass that of the world government and make him just basically rule the world.
I gotta say, Smoker called it back in Rain Dinners, where he was like, this might like the fate of the world. I'm like, whoa, buddy, that's
yeah,
you're talking big, but no, that's Crocodile's plan, is that he wants a super weapon.
He is nothing without ambition.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I feel like this is far above anything we've ever seen in the story up to this point. Like it is some straight up like take over the world kind of stuff.
Yeah,
and this feels like the perfect place and the perfect build up for it.
Just to sort of set these seeds and like, all right, you're on the grand line. Here's the scale of what we're dealing with. But Cobra is trying to act like, no, Pluton, I don't know what you're talking about, even though his face from the previous chapter was like,
right, like, you kind of gave it away.
But he's also using this, plans upon plans upon plans, because the palace square, where the royal army is gathered, in 30 minutes, a powerful cannon will fire a projectile, a cannonball that will blast a crater 3 miles in diameter.
Woo!
And just completely, basically wipe out most of Alabarna.
Man, why does he want a super weapon if he's just like, I could blow this place up anytime I want?
Right, but that's a city. This is an island. And I'm guessing he's talking about an island the size of Alabasta?
Probably.
Yeah, something like that. So he's just estimating that the rebel forces will make it to the square in 20 minutes. He even makes fun of Vivi's plan. It's like, oh, destroy the palace. That's such an indirect method. Just faster to blow the rebels up.
I mean, it's got a point.
Yeah, so. And it's like, okay, we have a ticking clock at this point. That is not
if there wasn't
great.
enough tension already, like I feel like this is just like that extra little, like especially now that like everybody's fights are kind of wrapping up. Mm-hmm. Like this feels like we have one more problem to deal with.
Right. It's not over.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another question that Crocodile has that even shows even more of his just plans and how much he's learned. He's looking for something called a poneglyph. Where is the poneglyph recorded? According to Vivi, it's something to do with a record of history.
Man, all this lore we're getting here.
Yeah.
Before reading it before the podcast, I completely forgot all of this was here.
Oh, wow. I remember the talks about this. I forget exactly what it results in or anything like that, but I do remember these aspects. I don't know if they've ever been fully paid off from what I've read. I can't remember that. Cobra's like, in this case, like, yeah, I'll take you there. And Chaka is done.
yeah, he's ready to throw hands. But we don't get to see it.
No, he's ready to fight, but we don't actually see it. Instead, we go to our final Baroque Works fight. Zoro versus Mr. One. And Bull Needles does nothing against the Iron Guard. And basically Zoro comes down to, it's like, okay, so your body is as hard as metal. If I want to cut you, I'm going to have to be able to cut steel. Zoro's just like, that sucks. I can't cut steel yet. But I feel sorry for you because I've been wanting to do that. So this will actually be able to take me up a notch.
like Zoro's basically like, all right, I'm going to get some training in.
Yeah, that's basically what this is. It's like, you're not an opponent, you're an obstacle.
Yeah, exactly. Which, I mean, I feel like Mr. One has definitely had, like, he's definitely been, like, the most, I was going to say the most boring, but maybe more, like, the least characterized out of all of the, like, Baroque Works members we had to fight.
Yeah.
So I feel like Zoro just kind of coming out and saying it, like, yeah, you're just, like, you're not even an opponent. Like, you're just a wall in my way. It is like, you know what? I mean, he's right.
He's not wrong, yeah. And that's pretty much it for the chapter. So let's not waste any time. Let's get to this big fight between these two.
I mean, look, we got it right here. No breaks.
Exactly. Chapter 194, Cutting Steel, where it just says no breaks with Luffy surfing. And that's pretty great.
Yeah. I really like this cover art.
That's just fun. And as Mr. One puts it, ever since he got his dice power, no swordsman has ever made a scratch on him. It's like, okay, well, you haven't fought Mahawk, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's the first thing I thought.
Uh-huh. I really love the banter between these two. It just, both of them are just so confident.
Yeah. Zoro knows how to just get under his skin at all times because, like, yeah, I understand, but you should put your stories from the past in a photo album because, I have no idea how many of you fought, but you never met someone like me before.
And then once we get here into the fight proper, I love, because Mr. One's entire body is a blade, Oda is able to, like, get really creative with, like, the paneling and the poses that he uses for Mr. One. So just like that clash at the bottom of the page where, like, Mr. One just has, like, his leg up and Zoro's blocking it with his swords. Like, this is the kind of thing that could only happen in One Piece.
Yeah, it's interesting combination of basically Mr. One using martial arts while using those razor bits of him, and it makes it pretty dynamic compared to your typical swordsman. And to see, like, his fingers, his leg, just everything just be all blades. As
Yeah, and the way there's this one panel where like Zoro has to bend over backwards to dodge Mr. One's leg like coming straight at him, and it just like it really does. It feels like a swordsman versus a martial artist.
he gets some good hits, and the thing is, what I immediately noticed here is that he dodged all those attacks, unleashed the onigiri and the tiger trap to do some massive hits on Mr.
They look
One.
so good.
It looks fantastic, and that to me immediately showed that Zoro is absolutely stronger than Mr. One. He just needs to get through his body.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's why he is a wall. Again, I love Mr. One throwing, like, he might not have a lot of characterization, but I love how he's throwing back the shade. It's like, of course, you've never met someone like me before. It's like, all right, these two's banter is pretty fun.
To see them relatively evenly matched and that they can just kind of talk smack at each other it's really fun to read.
Again, that posing, those wide kicks, that straight up attack that Zoro has to get over in the left panel here. It reminds me of the Sanji fight, where it's just Oda stepping up his game with these more action-based fights with how dynamic they look and how easy they are to read. And then you get into these really impressive attacks like the daisy blades that just shoot out you cut that building in half. Like, it's a massive fight.
Yeah, it just seeing the scale ramp up like this is so good. And then just like Zoro gets like blasted into the rubble of the house.
Yeah, and he's finally a little beat up. We see him bleeding. Finally, got a good hit on him. And this is an opportunity to have a little bit of a flashback. It's finally, Zoro getting his fleshed out a little bit more. Where young Zoro is asking the sensei, the really callous sensei, like, "Hey, there's people that can cut through steel. Is that true?" "Yeah. So watch this paper carefully." And he just does like a whap against it. It's like, it's still in one piece.
Yep.
And the lesson is, there are swordsmen in this world who are able to not cut anything. These same swordsmen also have the ability to cut through steel, and with the same instrument. The pinnacle of swordsmanship is the power to protect what one wishes to protect and cut what one wishes to cut. A blade that injures all that it touches isn't really a sword.
Thematically, this is so good.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we'll get into it as we go further, but that's a good line when you look at this fight itself.
For sure. Well, the payoff for this will come in the next chapter, but just seeing it here definitely it had me interested in how this would play out again.
And then Zoro showing off the insane strength with him. He picks up the bisected building.
I love, in particular, the building that Zoro is holding is the only part of the panel that is in screen tone to bring your attention to it. And like the edges of the building are kind of like cutting through the background like it's a frame.
Yeah, it like stands out so much and looks so freaking cool. And then you get that face of his. He looks like a villain.
Yeah, he does. Just bleeding out of his eye. You know, that'll be the end of you.
And we got this last bit. It's like, I'll dice everything in sight versus a sword that doesn't cut anything. And it's a good, it's a good thing there. We do have an SBS where Oda goes over a very common question about how evolved he is in the anime. And it's basically just comes down to character designs and for the movies and original anime stories. And he breaks down the animation process, and it's basically what you'd expect for most anime.
It's cool that he seems to really respect the process and really respects the team making the anime, and I do feel like that is something that does get lost in discussions, and even us we complain about the anime and its glacial pacing all the time, but like just the amount of work that goes into it, and Oda sort of seeing his world come alive in animation, I think is really valuable. Yeah,
that's a big thing, and. Obviously, I'm not caught up with the anime at all, but I have heard that the animation for the anime has gotten unbelievable lately, which is really funny when you look at where it began. Like when I was finding clips for the previous episode, for the outro there for the podcast, I saw the fight between Mr. Two and Sanji, and it's a scene where they're like on their hands and like kicking each other's legs and whatnot. They were saying that looks so cool, and I'm watching it there, and it's like it's relatively smooth animation, but it's also repeated a lot and seems to lack impact, and it's just sort of like not as cool as like what you'd imagined. It's still effective,
quite,
but
yeah.
not quite
Yeah,
to where it's not as dynamic, I think is the best way to put it.
Yeah, you can definitely it kind of comes and goes. There are definitely eras where the anime is it's I think struggles under just like the limitations of what the scale of the manga is versus what you can realistically do in a weekly anime that has been weekly, and it's not seasonal, so they really have to stick to a very strict schedule, which does, like I said, it has problems and it has flaws, but I think there's some perspective here with the way that Oda talks about the anime here.
Yeah, I think so. But let's go ahead and get on into our last chapter for the episode, chapter 195, Mr. Bushido. And we have Cammy the Mermaid and Starfish Papagoo. They're the ones in this.
Coming out of the bore.
We have our first mermaid and a starfish Rastaman. Rastafarian.
I can't believe this is here. Is all I'll say about this.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, a mermaid.
I did not know
already.
Yeah, like, oh, all right, cool. we'll keep that in mind.
They talked about mermaids later on, and like, bam, here they are.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. But yeah, that's really all there is to say. They just burst out, so
yeah, so they were in the bore.
Yep, eaten by two things. But yeah, Zoro tosses the building at Mr. One, and he's just repeating that mantra, is trying to figure out what it is. And we get Atomic Dicer is just, that is cool. Just
the
slices.
Not only the scale of it, but seeing like Zoro kind of burst through the debris. It really feels like Oda is stepping up his fight choreography here, and just like the insane set pieces that are going on. I had a thought about, particularly with the Sanji and Nami fights, it sort of felt like, okay, yeah, they're just fighting in the middle of the street, and that's fine. But I really love here with Usopp and Choppers, and here with the Zoros, like, he's getting really creative with the particular setting. And I think that is something we'll see in a lot of One Piece fights, but yeah, these are definitely really, really strong examples of them.
Agreed. Yeah, and we just get this, again, a further back and forth, and Zoro pressing the attack and definitely getting him. We even got a new sword attack, the crab grab, across the neck.
I want to point out on the previous page that shot of Zoro with the two swords, like sliding his swords down Mr. One's like outstretched leg. It's
cool.
Awesome. I
didn't even realize that. That is good.
Yeah. There's so many ideas going on in here that it's just like it is an incredibly straightforward fight, but it's gorgeous to behold. Yeah, and even the crab grab here too, like the way that you feel the force of every impact.
Yeah. And then we get sort of the most terrifying part of Mr. One, where he's just sort of like been making blades for most of them. He didn't seem to have the creativity that Doublefinger had until we get to his buzzsaws.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm not a swordsman. I have a lot of other weapons I can dismantle you with. And he just brings out buzzsaws that he's somehow able to spin.
Yeah, I don't know where the spinning part comes from.
I don't know either, but I love how Zoro just says, oh, you're not a swordsman. You're an excavator.
He's an assassin.
Yeah.
And then I love like seeing the sparks fly from the clash and the black ink kind of contrasting to
show the shadows.
Yeah. You see the shadows and just like them kind of being overtaken in a bright light, and you're just like, it really shows how many sparks are flying and how much light is coming off of the clash between the swords and his buzzsaws.
It does throw Zoro enough off balance that he loses his step, and we get this excavation work is impossible. I'd make too much of a mess. That's I gotta say that's a good line, especially as just that shook across his chest, like
or like he just got like that's a punch, like
that's a punch, and you just see his chest kind of ripped to ribbons. Like, oh, Zoro, your poor chest.
We're at the part of the fight where Zoro gets messed up real bad. Which is every Zoro fight.
I mean, it looks devastating, and we've seen Zoro like go into fights with already having hits. This is one of the first fights where he's taken damage going through all this, and it's just god. But yeah, sends him into that pillar, basically all done, and it looks to be done. It's like, oh, you're still alive. And I love that line, don't turn your back on him, because he knows he's going in for another attack. He's like, no scars on the back.
I didn't think about that. You're right.
Yeah.
Oh man.
That's
so good.
That's why he made sure to turn around. Like, he took that hit from the tower crusher, but he made sure it was to his front.
That's so cool.
And then the pillar collapses on top of him.
I love that line. It's just Zoro on his dying breath. I'm having bad luck with stone today.
Yes. And then you get this wonderful moment where it just seems to be over. Mr. One walking away, cracking his knuckles or cracking his neck. And all Zoro does is think, I wonder if the others are okay. And Mr. One turns back, and there's Zoro looming over,
standing up,
bleeding like crazy.
It's just so it's so cool, man.
It's like, how could you possibly stand? I cut you to ribbons, and how did you dodge all that falling rubble? It's like, dodge? No, that's not it. I knew where the stones wouldn't fall. And he's like, oh, my sword, it's under that rock.
I love this introspection from Zoro here. I feel like this is the most we've ever heard him think.
Yeah, I absolutely is. It's like, there's this. And it's like, I've had this feeling. Everything around me was eerily silent. And I could just sense them all. It's like breathing, the rocks, the trees, the earth. And that's when he finally understands to not cut anything is that like
the hearing
the breathing, the power to cut steel. It's like, that's cool. And just like, as he's Mr. One's taunting, it's just like, all right, I'm going to put you down for good next time. And we get this wonderful shot of Zoro slicing against palm trees, nothing cut, and then just a little shook against stone, cuts it clean through.
Yeah. I really love, again, seeing his sensei in the flashback, just like, he just smacks the paper with a sword, and then seeing Zoro do it here, like with something that you could cut very easily. It just having that there, having it, his actions connect back to that is, it's just one chapter, but like it's a really cool parallel.
It is. It absolutely is. And it's like, okay, I have this, I can do this. Let's see if I can cut through steel. And he's like, I don't need to defend myself anymore. One sword, one strike. A lion strike against the atomic dicer, and it just cuts to him already slicing through Mr. One.
Yeah.
Blood splatter, and he just says, my thanks, now I'm stronger. I'm like, that's so freaking cool. That's all Zoro is every time.
He always has the coolest fights. It's the rule.
It seems
I mentioned before we started recording that I went back to the anime version of this fight just because the finisher basically lives rent free in my head for just how I think it is one of those situations where the anime actually does use pacing and its advantages as like like a visual medium over like compared to manga, where the finisher is a little more cinematic, where like they do their final attacks, and then the anime just like it cuts to like the sky and the birds flying away, and there's just like silence for a bit, and then like that spread is this slow zoom out to Zoro in the pose, and then once Zoro sheaths, that's when the blood spurts out from Mr. One, and I'm just like
good.
And then just the music swelling up after that. It just A+ every time. Yeah. It's just like, okay, yeah, it's just as sick as I remember.
And as we mentioned with the last chapter, the teacher saying that, being able to cut anything is not a sword. And what did Mr. One say? He's like, I'm not a sword. He just cuts everything. So that's the difference. And I like that, just that little subtle thing that I didn't even pick up on the first time I read it.
Yeah. I think the start of Zoro really starting to define himself as a swordsman, And I think it is because this is maybe it is what his first major encounter since Mihawk. I mean, he fought in he's fought at various points up to now, but this was like the most he had ever been pushed since Mihawk. And it really, you're starting to see Zoro develop as a swordsman in a way that I think is just really satisfying. And him reaching the next level like this is it's so good. It's
also the conclusion to the arc he's had pretty much since the beginning of the Baroque Works saga, where he realizes like, if only I could cut steel, I could get us out of this. If only I could do like cut steel. He says it so many times throughout the arc, and it finally builds to this moment where yes, he achieves it. Yep.
It feels good. It's definitely it's still my favorite fight of this section, even if it is the most straightforward with the least interesting antagonist.
Yes.
Seeing the character development for Zoro and the foreshadowing too. It's just like, oh man, it's awesome.
Yeah, super well done. And, you know, even though Nami didn't quite live up to my expectations or my hopes, Zoro always there with the clincher, and
He saved this episode. Thank you, Zoro.
yes, and as we know, it does get better for Nami. So yeah, I think with that, I believe we've said all we've wanted to say about chapters 191 to 195 of One Piece. Thank you so much for listening, and you can find more of my ramblings and stream VODs over at BitNerd Games on YouTube, or BitNerd with an underscore at the end on Twitter. And Brandon, where can everyone find you?
I am on Twitter at Brandon Bovia, just my name, talking about anime, manga, games, and my job. I feel a little weird about sharing this now because I have no idea when it's going to come out, but I guested on, oh god, I'm going to blank on the name of this podcast. I'm so sorry. I think it is called Another Day, Another Adventure, and it is two of my friends going through the original Dragon Ball.
Oh, okay.
And so they had me on as a guest. We recorded that on Monday. I genuinely don't know when that will be out, but I'm probably going to forget once it comes out. So I figure I might as well, I'll be sharing it on my on Twitter and stuff. So just keep an eye out for that. We were covering.
Is that same? I was going to ask, is the same structure as us, where it's like 5 chapters at a time, or?
I think they are going 4 episodes of the anime.
Oh, they're going anime. Okay.
Yeah. Which is that was maybe 60 to 70% of that conversation was like. Because for context, so we covered they were fairly into the Red Ribbon arc, and so we're around the point where General Blue gets introduced, and so it's like a lot of jokes that didn't hold up very well. After 40 years, big surprise. And so after I watched the anime versions of that batch, I was like, this hit differently. I don't remember it being this bad in the manga. So of course, in the manga, of course, the jokes aren't great. But Toriyama, paces it so fast that it's like you kind of roll your eyes for a page and move on. But like some really kind of uncomfortable stuff happens when you have to watch it play out over the course of like 15 minutes.
Yeah, that is true. Oh boy. Well,
yeah,
like you said,
it was very entertaining.
Years.
But yeah, that's Dragon Ball for you.
Yep. Oh, wow. But yeah, check that out, and definitely check out more from Brandon. And if you'd like to help us out more, you can support the podcast over at patreon.com/Derek Bittner. That's DERRICKBITNER to listen to the next episode 3 days early. And make sure to return next time as we discuss chapters 196 to 200 of One Piece. Until then, my friends, bye.
Remember to take 200 chapters, one piece at a time.
Do I really have the ability to cut steel? Well, there's only one way to find out.
You failed with 3 swords. Can you defend yourself with only 1?
I won't defend.
So you're prepared to die!
One sword style. Lion strike!
Atomic Spurt!
Thanks to you, I finally reached the next level.